Hey everybody, today I'm going to do my full review of the Gearwrench 120XP flex head ratchets. I picked up a set of these from Trident Industrial Supply after reading a lot of good things about them as well as the Gearwrench 120XPs on GarageJournal.com. The best part about the 120XPs is the extremely small swing arc, which means the movement that they take to move a fastener. It is only 3 degrees because there are 120 positions or 120 clicks in a full circle on one of these. So if you want to imagine like a clock and it might have 60 seconds on the second hand going around, there's 360 degrees in a circle divided by 60 seconds. Each second movement is 6 degrees. The 120XPs only need half a second or 3 degrees to actually click. So if you're in a real tight situation, this is the type of ratchet that you need in order to move the fastener. I'm going to show you some clips now of these in action, and you'll be able to see for yourself just how good the 120XP ratchets really are. Okay, first I'm going to start out showing you the 1/2" drive Gearwrench ratchet. That is the Gearwrench 120XP flex head up here at the top. I'm going to be comparing this to a Matco 1/2" drive ratchet as well as a Craftsman 1/2" drive ratchet. And what really sets the Gearwrench apart, if you've been looking at these at all, you'll know that there are 120 positions in a full turn on one of these ratchet heads. Where the Matco, I'm not sure of the exact tooth count, but I believe it's more like a 6-degree turn. And the Craftsman, I believe, is even up to an 8 or 10-degree turn because there are far fewer positions or far fewer teeth inside the ratchet head itself. And what that basically means is the Gearwrench, in order to make one full turn on a socket, you'll hear 120 clicks in one full turn. Where if this was a Craftsman ratchet, let's say this was a 36 tooth, there would only be 36 clicks in an entire turn. So the socket would need to turn a lot more in order to engage the following tooth versus the Gearwrench ratchet. And what I'm going to do now is zoom in on these, and you'll be able to see for yourself that the Gearwrench needs a much smaller turn before you're going to hear a click, where these Craftsman or even the Matco, the socket's going to turn a lot more before you have tooth engagement. And that really doesn't seem like a big deal in a lot of situations, and in a lot of situations it is not a big deal. But when you get in those real tight situations, that's where it's going to come into play. Because you'll be in a very narrow space and you'll only have very little room to wiggle around, and the coarser tooth ratchets will not even engage the fastener because there's not enough flex in there to make the next tooth engage. Where the Gearwrench 120XP needs very little movement, and if you work it back and forth, that fastener will eventually come loose. So we're going to start out with a Craftsman ratchet right here. This is the 1/2" drive, and I have just a standard socket on here. I use impact sockets so you can see them turn easier, but a regular socket would have the exact same method. This is just for demonstration purposes. So what I'm going to do is line this up now with some lettering on here so you can actually see the socket move. And you'll see each click how much it needs to rotate in order to turn. So I'll do this one click at a time, and you can see how much it actually needs to turn before you're going to have that following tooth engagement. So this is the Craftsman. And you can see for yourself that it really is turning a lot before the tooth is engaging. And to just show you maybe a side view, you can watch the little directional change lever here. You can probably see it move also along with this socket moving. So you can see each time it clicks is one tooth engagement. And you know, this is a lot better than a lot of your made in China ones or just junk drawer ones. But you'll see the difference between this and the Matco or the Gearwrench here in a second. Alright, so that is the Craftsman. Now we'll move on to the Matco. Same thing, they're all turning clockwise. And watch the lever and then watch the wording that is imprinted on this socket. And this is either at or below the tooth count of the Craftsman because it looks to me like the socket is actually turning more before tooth engagement. So you can see these numbers moving down, and I mean this is just one click at a time. You can see how much it's moving. And these do work very well in a lot of situations, but if you're in a real tight situation, you don't have all that wiggle room, this would be very ineffective. So now we'll move on to the Gearwrench 120 XP. Same direction, watch the numbers, and this is one click at a time. You can see the numbers are just barely moving at all, and we're getting one click each time. Each time I'm releasing my fingers is a click. So you can see if you were in a real tight situation why this would matter. If you didn't choose to get the flex head variety of this and you chose to go with a 120 XP just standard one that was not flex head, you would still have the much better swing. The internals of this would be the same, it just wouldn't have that flex head. So the Matco and the Gearwrench side by side, we'll do one click at a time each and just show you how fast they both spin. So I'll do this side by side, one click each, and I'll release my hand with each one that clicks. So here they both go. We're alternating, so just look at the wording and watch how much it's moving on the Matco versus the Gearwrench. You can see we're still basically where we started, and this is rotating completely down. Oop, that was a double click. But you can see that there is a very low swing arc with this, which is the rotation, versus an older one with less engagement points inside the head. And I think that this is a fairly good demonstration to just show you what that means. Instead of just seeing a large number, you can actually see that it does mean something. It means that this socket does not have to turn very much, where the Matco is definitely turning a lot. I mean, you can see the little indentation hole right here, how much it's another double click. It's so fine it's hard to just do one click at a time, to be perfectly honest. And with the half-inch drive, it was much easier to show you than on something like the quarter-inch drive, because it was just such a small movement, it really wasn't easy to pick up on. So we'll move on now and show you the Gearwrench versus the Craftsman. It'll be the same kind of deal. We'll rotate this up so you can see the wording. And just watch them side by side and how much they actually turn when in between clicks. And like I said, I'm removing my hands in between clicks. You can see the words just moving right on down with the Craftsman, and then with the Gearwrench, very little movement whatsoever because of that extremely low swing arc. So what you need to keep in mind is, oh, got a double click. But what you need to keep in mind is with something that with a higher turning radius or a higher swing arc, you might need to go 3 clicks on the Gearwrench with 1 click on the Craftsman. So if you have a real tight spot where you can't even get 1 click, or it's just barely enough to get 1 click, you might actually get 3 or 4 clicks with the Gearwrench. So it would allow you to remove a fastener much faster by using the Gearwrench. I think a lot of people would be very interested to see the internals of the Gearwrench 120 XP ratchet head itself, just to show you what that 120 positions really is made up of. It's going to be made up of dual pawls, which, like I said, are alternating. So depending on the click, one's going to be engaged, and the following click, that will be disengaged, and the next pawl will be engaged. And I'm going to take off this dust cover as well as this snap ring and zoom in here just to show you. After I remove that, I'm going to show you how the internals move around, and then I'm going to go ahead and just take the entire ratchet head apart. And you'll be able to see how everything works together to create those 120 positions. So I'm going to zoom in now just so you can see me take this apart. Let's see, here we go. We'll zoom in, and then I'm going to take my snap ring pliers, and I'm going to take this snap ring out. It's a fairly standard method of ratchet head design. You take the snap ring out, that'll pop right out of there. This is what holds basically everything inside the ratchet head itself, is a snap ring. So typically with new ratchets, I'll take these apart and then lubricate them very well inside, because a lot of ratchets you get will have almost no lubrication and they're very loud. I have not taken this ratchet head apart yet because I wanted to save that for the video, but I'm going to remove this protective dust cover next. To do that, I'm actually going to just pop the ratchet head up and then knock it down, or see, alright, here it goes. Here's the protective dust cover. And once again, it's just a standard little piece of metal that holds everything inside, and then it keeps the dust and debris out. It looks like Gearwrench actually has lubricated this straight from the factory, which is surprising to me. Most of them are not very lubricated at all. And inside of here, let's see if you can see this. Inside of here, you can see the ratchet head turn. Let's see if I can move this around for you guys. You can see the ratchet head turn. And you can, oh, there you go. You can see the dual pawl mechanism. Let me zoom in a little more now and you can see this closer, how this works. You'll be able to see with the alternating dual pawl, you'll see one engage. There's the top one here and then there's another one underneath. So you'll see one engage and then the following one engage. So it's engaged, now it's not engaged. It's engaged, now it's not engaged. Because it's alternating between this top one and the one behind it. So there you go. Now it's engaged. And it looks like there are a number of teeth. It looks, I would guess about 10 teeth on that pawl that are engaging the ratchet head mechanism itself. The little cog that spins around. Now the one in the rear, now the one in the front is engaged. So that's the dual pawl. So you really only need half a turn on this in order to click, and then the following half a turn would make the alternating pawl turn. So that is where they get that real small 3-degree swing arc. And like I said, this if you want to think about it like a clock turning, and you watch a clock and the second hand goes around with 60 seconds, because it's 360 degrees around, divide that by 60 seconds, 6 degrees per second. So if you're watching a second hand go around, every second it changes is 6 degrees. So this is really only half a second. And then the following half a second, the other pawl would engage. So I'm going to take the rest of this out now. I'm going to pop this out of here, and then we'll have the two pawls themselves. So there's the Gearwrench little cog with all the teeth in it. Really really fine tooth, and they have done a very good job lubricating this. It looks like they've used white lithium grease or something similar. And then you have your two pawls in here. Here's one pawl. It's going to be half the width of the head itself. Let's see if we can get this in the same shot. I'm really zoomed in here, guys, so I apologize. All right, there you go. So you can see one would be engaged and then the other one would be engaged. And they have a lot of surface contact because of the large amount of teeth that they have connecting the two. That's why you're not experiencing any slippage. And if they had done a single pawl with 120 teeth on the cog, the teeth would be so fine, basically it would not engage at all, and you would have nothing but problems out of it. So by them doing the dual pawl mechanism, they were able to keep the teeth relatively coarse inside of here compared to a higher tooth count one. And because of the large amount of teeth on the pawl itself, you're having a lot of surface contact there. So I'll take this other little pawl out now. It looks pretty much identical. It's the machining on it's slightly different, but the surface contact area is pretty much exactly the same because these are alternating. So this one's going to lift up. Let's see if I can do this like this. This one's going to lift up, and then the next engagement point, this one's going to lift up. So it's like, just imagine yourself walking down the street is basically the way this is designed. And inside of here they have some little pins that keep them in place with some springs underneath, and then the selector mechanism itself. I'm probably not, I'm going to have to turn the camera off to get all this back together, but just to show you the internals of this, this is basically what makes the Gearwrench 120 XP work. And I also want to note that all of the parts inside of here are metal. So it's not like Craftsman now, because Craftsman's made in China now. Even if you get a made in USA rebuilt ratchet, they use all plastic selectors and everything like that, and they do snap off, where I think this 120 XP with its metal is going to hold up a lot better. And then even on this selector valve or selector switch, they have a rubber O-ring, so that will keep dust and dirt and debris and water from getting inside of there. So that's really another nice feature that I had not seen before. I think they've done an excellent job with this ratchet, and like I said, now you can see how the internals actually work, and it's a very beefy head, real thick walls on it, and everything fits in there nice and tight, and luckily it does come pre-greased, so there would be no need for you to take this back apart if you get a set in order to grease anything. Okay, now the same sort of deal. I'm going to go over the 3/8 inch drive. I have the Gearwrench 120 XP along with an older SK model 47170 and then a Craftsman made in the USA 44811. These are all 3/8 inch drive, and the biggest deal with these, other than the length and the flex head, are going to be the internals once again. It's going to be the same kind of a display just to show you the rotation that the Gearwrench needs versus the SK or the Craftsman. But, you know, this will just show you if you are using something like this or you're using an older Craftsman, you really could benefit with something like the Gearwrench 120 XP because of that very low swing arc. So I'm going to zoom in again and then show you the differences between these three. Okay, here are 3/8 inch drive. We have the Craftsman, the SK, and the Gearwrench. And what I'm going to show you now is the amount of swing that these need in order to have tooth engagement. And what I'll do is I will have one click and then I will release and I'll move on to the next one, and I'll just keep doing this in a rotation, and you can see how fast these sockets are spinning. And you can notice the size markings right here. We have 7/8, 15/16, and 1 inch. Those are on both sides of the socket. So on a socket on 180 degrees, you're going to see this again. So you'll be able to see in a half a turn how much the Gearwrench moves versus when one of these other ones make a complete half turn. And I'll start out with the Craftsman. We'll do one click, and you can see, just keep note of how much these are having to turn in between one click. And the SK and the Craftsman look very, actually I think I double clicked that one, but the SK and the Craftsman are very similar with the amount of swing that they need, and then the Gearwrench needs very little. That will really help in tight situations, because a lot of times you're working in a very tight area under a dash or maybe in an engine bay, and you don't have a lot of room. And if you've done a lot of work with cars, you know that you will have a very tight space, and you'll be lucky to get one click on the ratchet, where if you had something like the Gearwrench in that same amount of space, you would have, I don't know, 3 or 4 clicks. So it would allow you to continue the movement instead of having to do a lot of work just for one click. And it'll really save you a lot of time. And then with the flex head, the ones that I went with, the flex head, it really allows you to get into some awkward positions and tight positions, and then you still are holding on to one piece of metal, so you're not dealing with extensions and things like that and trying to really rig something together in order to make it work. Alright, so we have the Craftsman. Let's do one more click on each one. But the Craftsman has a... The Craftsman is the biggest loser in this little test, because it would have the lowest amount of engagement points, which means it would have the lowest tooth count internals. So you can see after a 180 degree turn, it's all the way back at the top. The SK is slightly behind it. And then in order for the Gearwrench to do 180 degrees, this little badge here on the side would have to be facing completely at the bottom. So it didn't even make half a turn, where actually it only did about a quarter of a turn to these half a turns. So the engagement points on the Gearwrench are by far much lower, and the swing arc, like I had said, is 3 degrees on this, where these are probably between 8 and 10 degrees, which, you know, they work, but they are not going to work nearly as well in tight situations as the Gearwrench 120 XPs. A few more things that I want to point out with the 120 XP ratchets is that because Gearwrench makes them, they carry a lifetime warranty. So if they ever break, you can call up Gearwrench and get a replacement. In addition to that, it comes with a really nice foam tool tray that fits right in your toolbox and will keep these all arranged very nicely. I am not a fan of tool trays whatsoever, but with this foam tool tray, I actually have been using it, where a lot of the other tools will come with a plastic blow mold tool tray, and I chuck those right in the trash. If you like this video, please click like. If you like my channel, please click subscribe, and thanks for watching.